They saw nothing but worn-out shoes and assumed he was nobody. Whispers turned to laughter, as if his presence didn't belong in their polished world. But behind those scuffed soles was a story they could never imagine, a journey built on struggle, sacrifice, and resilience. What they mocked as weakness was the very symbol of his rise. They thought they were laughing at a poor man. In truth, they were standing in front of someone whose success would one day silence them all. It was a bright Saturday afternoon when Marcus stepped into the bustling downtown plaza. He wasn't dressed in designer suits or polished leather shoes, just his usual faded jeans, a plain shirt, and those old sneakers he had worn for years. They carried the marks of his journey, scuffs from long walks to early jobs, worn soles from days when bus fare wasn't an option, and creases that spoke of endurance. To him, they weren't just shoes, they were memories of where he had started. But to the people around him, appearances told a different story. Shoppers passed with quick glances, their eyes landing on his shoes before moving away with a smirk. A group near the cafe chuckled openly, nudging one another as if he were the punchline of some unspoken joke. He didn't react, he'd grown used to this. The world had taught him early that people often judged what they saw, not who you were. What no one knew was that Marcus had built an empire quietly, steadily, while wearing those very shoes. Behind the surface, he was a man who had transformed setbacks into opportunities, who turned rejection into drive. His presence in that plaza wasn't chance, it was deliberate. Something was about to unfold that would make every mocking glance stop cold. Marcus walked slowly through the plaza, the hum of conversation surrounding him. Every step seemed to echo with the sound of quiet judgment. His sneakers squeaked slightly against the polished stone, a reminder that they didn't belong in this world of luxury storefronts and shining marble floors. To him, it didn't matter, but to them, it was all they needed to decide who he was. A group of young professionals leaned casually outside a cafe, their laughter cutting through the air. One pointed at his shoes, loud enough for others to hear. "Looks like someone forgot this isn't a thrift store." The others erupted in laughter. Marcus didn't flinch. He'd heard worse, yet every chuckle seemed to peel back the truth of how quickly appearances shaped value in their eyes. Inside the plaza, a high-end boutique caught his attention. He stepped inside, running his hand across the fine leather bags and tailored suits. But the clerk at the counter barely hid her disdain. She glanced at his sneakers, then at him, her smile tight and practiced. "These items might be outside your budget, sir," she said, her tone sharp but coated with false politeness. Marcus met her eyes for a brief moment, then simply nodded. He knew better than to argue. Experience had taught him that words never outweighed the labels people created in their minds. As he left the store, whispers followed him like shadows. "Probably can't even afford lunch here," one passerby muttered. Another smirked, shaking his head as if the sight of Marcus daring to exist in their space was some kind of offense. But Marcus's silence wasn't weakness. Beneath his calm demeanor was a man who had endured far worse than laughter and snide remarks. He had been dismissed in boardrooms, doubted in negotiations, underestimated at every stage. And yet, those very dismissals became the fuel that pushed him higher. Unseen by those mocking him, Marcus's name was printed on contracts worth millions, his investments spread across cities, his signature the key to doors they couldn't even dream of opening. The irony hung heavy. These very boutiques, these cafes, this plaza, they were tied, directly or indirectly, to his empire. The shoes they ridiculed had walked him into meetings that built it all. And soon, the moment would come when their laughter would catch in their throats. Something was about to happen that none of them expected. The laughter still lingered as Marcus made his way back toward the center of the plaza. He paused beneath the towering glass entrance of the newest luxury tower, the kind of building that cast long shadows across the entire district. People turned, curious, as a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. The driver stepped out briskly, nodding in Marcus's direction before opening the rear door. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The same man they had mocked for his shoes was being ushered in with deference and respect. But it didn't end there. From the tower's doors emerged a cluster of executives, their polished suits and cautious smiles betraying nervous energy. One of them shook Marcus's hand firmly, addressing him with a title the crowd wasn't prepared to hear. "Welcome back, Mr. Hayes. The boardroom is ready for you." The plaza fell silent. Conversations froze mid-sentence. The group outside the cafe, who had sneered and laughed, now stared in disbelief. The store clerk who had dismissed him earlier peered through the boutique's glass window, her mouth slightly open. Every assumption, every judgment they had made, shattered in an instant. Marcus gave a slight nod, his expression calm, unbothered, as though the sting of their mockery had never reached him. But inside, he knew this moment was larger than himself. It wasn't about proving them wrong, it was about exposing a truth they refused to see. Worth could never be measured by the scuffs on a pair of shoes. As the executives ushered him inside, the irony was complete. The tower, the plaza, the boutiques, the very ground beneath their feet, it all traced back to him. He wasn't just welcome there. He owned it. Marcus stepped into the boardroom with the same calm stride he had carried through the plaza. Behind him, whispers still swirled, a mixture of disbelief, shame, and silent recognition. The same people who had mocked his shoes now saw him in a light they couldn't reconcile. To them, he had transformed in an instant. But Marcus knew better. He hadn't changed at all. Their perception had. As he sat at the head of the table, looking out through the glass walls onto the plaza below, the moment weighed heavy. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even surprised. This was the same lesson he had learned all his life, that people judge first and only later realize the depth they failed to see. Today, the lesson hadn't been his to carry. It had been theirs. For Marcus, the old sneakers remained more than just footwear. They were a reminder that struggle had shaped him, not luxury. Every scuff told the story of resilience, of long nights and quiet sacrifices. And though the crowd saw wealth and power now, Marcus knew the true measure of a man was never in appearance, but in the journey that brought him here. The question